Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Donald Trump is forever promising that he's going to prosecute his enemies. For, going on 10 years now? He's been threatening to do what? Lock her up, right? Hillary Clinton, the OG of Donald Trump's wrath. How many times has he said he's going to prosecute Hillary Clinton? And then in his first term, Trump's Department of Justice actually tried to go after Adam Schiff, and they failed. Why do they never actually prosecute people Donald Trump has been railing against for years? Well, first and foremost, it's really tough to successfully prosecute people who have committed no crimes. And second, it might be because of this rarely used defense in the criminal law called vindictive prosecution. But before we turn to the legal doctrine of vindictive prosecution, let's start with the new reporting. This from CNN. Headline: Trump uses FBI and Justice Department to escalate his long-standing feud with Adam Schiff. And that article begins, in the first Trump administration, then Representative Adam Schiff led the House's investigations into Donald Trump, first as the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee's probe into Russian election interference, and then as the lead investigator of the withholding of Ukraine aid that led to the president's first impeachment. When Trump was out of office, Schiff was a member of the House committee that investigated his attempts to overturn the 2020 election and the January 6th, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Now, with Trump back in the White House and Schiff in the Senate, the president is using the full force of the federal government to try to turn the tables on his longtime nemesis. Last week, FBI Director Kash Patel declassified and released internal FBI interview notes from a former House Intelligence Committee staffer who first accused Schiff in 2017 of directing illegal leaks of classified information about Trump and Russia. The allegations from the former staffer had already been investigated in Trump's first term by federal prosecutors who questioned the staffer's credibility. But that didn't stop Trump from using the claims as a basis to call on Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate the California Democrat. This quote from a revenge-fueled Donald Trump, my editorial edition. Quote, I'm looking at Pam because I hope something's going to be done about it, Trump said while speaking at the Kennedy Center on Wednesday. Quote, it was a hoax created by the Democrats, but in particular, Schiff, Crooked Hillary, the whole group, close quote. And last month, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, a Trump ally, referred Schiff to the Justice Department over allegations of mortgage fraud. Schiff's lawyers blasted media reports of a grand jury investigation, calling the claims transparently false, stale, and long debunked. The attacks on Schiff are the latest example of how Trump and his government have carried out a campaign of retribution against a wide swath of the president's perceived political enemies, ranging from former Trump officials to members of Congress to the prosecutors who brought cases against Trump while he was out of office. Okay, friends, let's talk for just a few minutes about the legal defense of vindictive prosecution. And the good news is, you don't see it raised all that often. Why? Well, I would like to think, as a former career prosecutor, that prosecutors don't decide to go after somebody because they have, a strong personal animus, dislike, hatred, or because they're seeking revenge against a particular person. If for some reason I don't like my neighbor, so I say, you know what? I'm going to gin up some criminal charges and I'm going to prosecute them because I really don't like them personally. that would give rise to what may be a successful vindictive prosecution claim, and my neighbor could get the indictment dismissed based on vindictive prosecution. Essentially, if a defendant can show that he or she was prosecuted due to, the personal animosity of the prosecutor, or because the prosecutor is seeking revenge. And now when I say the prosecutor, Donald Trump has seized control of the Department of Justice and is directing his Attorney General Pam Bondi, do this, do that, do this, do that. So he, in substance, is the prosecutor. He's directing Pam Bondi to go after his enemies. And does Donald Trump have a personal animus toward Adam Schiff? Is Donald Trump seeking revenge against Adam Schiff for, I suppose, the fact that Adam Schiff, in his capacity as a legislator, a member of Congress, was involved in investigating the suspected crimes of Donald Trump and his administration. And Adam Schiff was one of the impeachment managers, which is sort of what we call the prosecutors, the people who pursue impeachment and then removal at the impeachment trial. He was one of the prosecutors in substance who presented the evidence, the case against Donald Trump for committing high crimes and misdemeanors. So does Donald Trump have a personal animus? Is he seeking revenge against Adam Schiff? Oh, you bet he is. And, frankly, if Adam Schiff was ever criminally indicted on some trumped up garbage by Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, Donald Trump's Department of Justice more accurately, boy, he would have a ready-made vindictive prosecution claim, and he would introduce at a motion to dismiss the charges based on vindictive prosecution every Donald Trump tweet, every Donald Trump post, every, slur and slander and mockery of Adam Schiff that Donald Trump leveled. He's forever trying to come up with cute catch names. I'm going to call him Shifty Schiff. I'm going to call him Pencil Neck Schiff. In the sort of juvenile way that Donald Trump, talks about his enemies, with apologies to juveniles. So yes, Adam Schiff would have a ready-made and compelling vindictive prosecution case. Now here's a little bit of a twist. I don't mean to turn this into a Team Justice law school class, but in the more traditional vindictive prosecution defenses, what will happen is the prosecutor will retaliate against a defendant for exercising a legal right. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe a defendant is trying to choose between a bench trial, that is, a trial where the judge makes the decision guilty or not guilty. It's called the judge sitting as the finder of fact, or a jury trial where the jury will make the decision about whether the defendant committed the crimes or not. And I can tell you from my experience, jury trials are much more cumbersome. They take a much longer time. They're much more rigorous in many ways for the prosecutor in particular, also for the defense attorney, than a bench trial, a judge alone trial. And so sometimes prosecutors will try to urge the defendant to waive his or her right to a jury and let the judge be the finder of fact. And if a defendant says, no, I'm going to exercise my legal right to a jury trial, and the prosecutor says, oh, really? Well, then I'm going to heap some more charges on you. That is kind of the more typical vindictive prosecution scenario, when a prosecutor retaliates for a defendant exercising a legal right. Another time we sometimes see a vindictive prosecution claim made is when a defendant is convicted at trial, he's sentenced, and the defendant says, I'm going to appeal my case, and the prosecutor says, oh, if you appeal, I'm going to charge you with some new crimes. That's another scenario where there may be a successful vindictive prosecution claim made because the prosecutor is trying to punish the defendant for exercising a legal right. So going after Adam Schiff for doing really what his legal responsibility is, acting as a legislator, investigating suspected crimes by the executive branch, which he is, empowered to do, I would say obligated to do under our constitutional construct. That's one of the important functions of Congress that the present Republicans in Congress have abandoned altogether. Serving as an impeachment manager at Donald Trump's impeachment trial is another legal duty, obligation that he undertook as a legislator, as a member of Congress. So if he's retaliated against for those acts, if Donald Trump is seeking revenge because Adam Schiff tried to hold him accountable, even though that is a little bit out of the mainstream of vindictive prosecution defenses that we ordinarily see, I suspect it would be a strong and probably a winning vindictive prosecution claim that would result in the case being dismissed against Adam Schiff. So friends, let's finish with this. It's not just Donald Trump's revenge-fueled tweets and posts and name-calling of Adam Schiff that would make for a winning vindictive prosecution claim. There's also a compelling piece of evidence of vindictive prosecution in the reporting that we were just looking at together. And it involved when Donald Trump, in his first term, had his DOJ, his federal prosecutors, look into allegations involving, alleged Schiff misconduct based on some staffer coming forward and claiming Adam Schiff was involved in leaking some information. And here is the reporting on that. The allegations from the former staffer had already been investigated in Trump's first term by federal prosecutors who questioned the staffer's credibility, and obviously charges were never brought. The claim was debunked, but that didn't stop Trump from using the claims as a basis to call on Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate the California Democrat. Friends, you don't need to be an experienced prosecutor or criminal defense attorney to recognize the importance of that kind of evidence. During Donald Trump's first term, he tried to use this staffer's claim to get after Adam Schiff, and Donald Trump's DOJ said, nope, we questioned the credibility of it, and no charges were brought. Donald Trump says, I don't care. Let's dredge up that old debunked claim, and I'm going to push it to Pam Bondi as part of my insistence that, revenge be sought against Adam Schiff. That feels pretty vindictive-ish, no? And that, friends, is one of the many reasons that I strongly suspect there will be no criminal indictment of Adam Schiff for anything, or frankly, any of Donald Trump's enemies that he's been railing against for years. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.